Oh, look, they're running a drill today and tomorrow called Operation Gotham Shield. Oh my god, they're going to detonate a nuclear EMP over New York. Yeah, right. I don't know why people can't understand that the enemy has this truth movement in its sights all the time and tailors its propaganda and militarized psyop expressly for us. This is why they like to give these ominous nuclear drills occult sounding names right out of Marvel Comics. Actually, the name Gotham goes all the way back to Robin Hood and his merry men. And if you take the time to ponder some actual truth, you'll find it in the thread of this fable. So, this explanation of where Gotham comes from, believe it or not, the BBC. So they're finally, of course, the only time they ever speak truth is when they're speaking through what's we take to be make believe, right? The real Gotham, the village behind the Batman stories, and it isn't New York. People in Gotham are accustomed to hearing Batman jokes, but many aren't aware of its historical connection to the fictional Gotham City. So how did a sleepy Nottinghamshire settlement lend its name to a city of crime and corruption? Gotham is now a friendly village popular with families, but a few hundred years ago its residents had a reputation for madness. One story goes that King John, also the villain in the legend of Robin Hood, was due to travel through Gotham on his way to nearby Nottingham. Any road the king traveled on would become a public highway, so the villagers are said to have feigned madness to deter the king, as it was thought to be infectious. Their absurd acts, including building a fence around a bush to prevent a cuckoo escaping and attempting to drown an eel in a pond. The trick worked, leading to the saying, "There are more fools that pass through Gotham than remain in it." Villagers were also dubbed the wise men of Gotham. Word of the supposed foolish acts spread, and they were collected in various books, including the Merry Tales of the Madmen of Gotham, published in 1565. The American author Washington Irving became aware of the tales and was the first person to link Gotham in England with New York in the U.S. He repeatedly referred to Manhattan as Gotham when writing. In 1807, in the Salmagundi Papers, a satirical periodical mocking New Yorkers, Gotham then became a popular nickname for New York and is still used today in shop names and notably at the Gotham Center for New York History. Edwin G. Burroughs and Mike Wallace also explain how the name was adopted by New Yorkers in their book Gotham, The History of New York City. They said Manhattanites would not likely have taken up a nickname so laden with pejorative connotations, even one bestowed by New York's most famous writer, unless it had redeemed qualities, and indeed some of the tales cast Gothamites in a flattering light. Gilhind, former chairman of Gotham Parish Council in England, tried for many years to have Gotham twinned with New York City. "We always knew there was some sort of link, but we want to have it verified. Then we found out about Washington Irving's connection," she says. "We did think it would be so lovely to have a sign at the beginning of the village saying Gotham twinned with New York." Although the city and the village have not been twinned, the former mayor of New York sent a letter wishing Gotham well and acknowledging the link between the two places. Rudolph Giuliani wrote that it was a pleasure to have this opportunity to acknowledge the cultural and historical link between the two places. So how did Batman stories come to be set in Gotham City rather than New York? Batman made his debut in issue 27 of Detective Comics in 1939. There's your 39 again, right? His setting was referred to as an unnamed teeming metropolis in issue 29, but by issue 31 it was explicitly identified as New York. Writer Bill Finger said he changed the name of Gotham after looking through a phone book and seeing the name Gotham Jewelers. Right? While Gotham Village is pronounced Gotham, stemming from Goat Town, the pronunciation Gotham was adopted for Batman, Goat Town, because you're all being herded like goats. Have you seen the Antifa thing? It's just total controlled opposition, and people are attacking each other, but it's extremely scripted. In a story called Cityscape, written by Dennis O'Neil in the Batman Chronicles #6 in 1996, there we go again, 1996, a villain plotting murder explains how the Gotham of the Batman universe was created. He enlists the help of an innocent man to build an asylum in the forest outside the town of Bloodhaven. That's interesting because someone pointed out that there were these mysterious power outages going on in San Francisco, New York, and some other place, but they were all port cities. And Haven is really a port. I think it's Greek for port. Bloodhaven, in all these port cities. Just fishing. And proposes naming it Gotham after a village in England where, according to common belief, all are bereft of their wits. In 2006, Justin Gray wrote about the King John story in Legends of the Dark Knight, #206, saying that his couriers found lunatics running wild in the streets when they arrived in the village of Gotham. And then the story goes on, but you get the gist. It's funny. It sounds, if you break it in two, it sounds like Gotham. But that's how they treat us. They treat us like a bunch of animals, cattle to be herded. They've got us so wonderfully under control that we're just like cattle. I used to think it was the Great Awakening, but I realize it's just another level of a deep coma that we're in. The story of how New Yorkers came to accept a derogatory nickname like Gotham encapsulates our global madness in an eggshell. I mean, no one would accept calling their town Goatville until some Jewish comic book illustrator sugarcoated the whole insult to become somehow a compliment. This fable is the very flower of our big sleep. It is as though Jew York has become the capital of humanity's worldview in our modern so-called enlightened age. With their helping hands that more than too often tend to hurt like hell, our Jewish overlords, movers and shakers, dreamers and thinkers, we've stooped to reach the zenith of our devolution. I've read a lot of comics in my time, and I happen to know that it all goes back to the ancient pagan gods like everything else in our global society. And let me tell you, our children are the main targets who more than not grow up to reign the new age pagan dystopian hell we are in the middle of building as I speak. And yeah, I said we because no matter how outside the box we think we are, the more we push against the New World Order, the more consolidated it becomes. If we could just follow the path that Jesus Christ left for us during his short time here in this realm, wearing the armor of God as he wants us to do, well, our overlords would literally turn to muck before our eyes. If you don't believe me, look around. Watch Ron Saturn's Eyes videos about because he shows you over and over again how they absolutely despise Jesus, but at the same time incorporate him, speaking backwards of course, in many of their Bollywood productions. Or just look at the movie Passion of the Christ, where the only passion I found was not with his message, but rather the graphic way in which they tortured him and hammered nails into him, with lots of CGI gore spitting out of our Savior's hand, just to drive his agony home to the audience. It was a disgusting state-sponsored snuff film, and the only thing good about it was that it displayed wonderfully their adverse hatred for this particular godhead. No, they need us to familiarize ourselves with goats. Zion's allegiance is to the principality of Saturn, This is why today, the 24th of April, the Donald is speaking live on CNN or PBS, what have you, in honor of the Holocaust industrial complex. And true to form, but not per usual, he just happens to be wearing a blue tie with the seal of Saturn all over it. You think I'm reading meaning into things which aren't there? Think again. If you ever want to win a case in a courtroom, you have to know the words they use. So for Operation Gotham Shield, perhaps the best thing to do is to look up the word shield in the etymology. Old English, skilled, shield, protector, defense, literally borrowed from Proto-Germanic, source also of Norse, Old Saxon, skilled, Middle Dutch, skilt, Dutch, shield, German, shield, Gothic, skildus, from skell, divide, split, separate, from pi, root, kel, to cut. Perhaps the notion is of a flat piece of wood made of splitting a log. Shelter comes from the word shield. 1580s, structure affording protection, possibly an alteration of Middle English. Sheltron, sheltrum, roof or wall, formed by locked shields. Truma, troop, related to Old English, trum, firm, strong. So basically, a shield comes from the structure of a house or walls. Like this goat fence that they put in the merry tales of the madmen of Gotham. And notice in the illustration that the shield or wall or protection that holds in the goats, the corral, is a hexagon. Isn't that neat? I live in Montreal up here, about 500 or 600 miles out of New York, and I haven't heard any warnings of a nuclear fallout moving towards this city, so I guess we're okay.